So as soon as you have a managed switch, you can specify on layer 2 while ARP is going on, right? You have this broadcasting, the IP helper, and you may not think that's a big deal, but it allows you control. And you're saying, well, you know, my devices already know how to find a DHCP server when I connect devices at my home to my wireless router. Yeah, you do. But there's nothing to prevent another DHCP or there's nothing to prevent devices from failing to find the DHCP server. Now, in terms of DHCP, this is called a scope, right? And you're probably thinking, okay, I don't see why I got to pay extra for that yet. Well, there's a couple of extra pieces in the secret sauce that make this interesting. The next thing I'm going to show you is what happens when you scale this on any of 1,200 screens and your same desktop and same documents and same pictures, videos, shortcuts, applications, everything followed you. It's called a roaming profile, right? All of that becomes possible on a managed network, right? Yes, you have to use VLANs, which is another topic for another day. But more importantly, let's say you have a DHCP server again. A single DHCP server is capable of having a scope for every LAN. What am I saying? I'm saying you can have 4 scopes, 1 for each LAN. And then the cool part is, so remember this thing about the DHCP helper or the IP helper?
Yeah.
Okay. So on a managed switch, your DHCP server could be on a separate network. We'll call it the server VLAN. And basically what you have is you've got a lot of muscle right here. You've got a lot of muscle right here, okay? When you have a DHCP server, you can support hundreds or even thousands of machines. But more to the point, you have control over the entire environment because you simply made the change from an unmanaged switch to a managed switch. When you use the IP helper, right? The IP helper says, hey, look here. The IP helper says, look there. See, everybody's looking to this DHCP server where if you had unmanaged switches, well, you better have a DHCP server in that LAN, on that LAN. And if you don't have a DHCP server local on just that one LAN, then you don't have DHCP. You don't have automatically assigned addresses. You can't scale. What happens is that basically you get this automatic IP addressing, a PIPA it's called. So you have to set up a DHCP server for every local area network for an unmanaged switch. But if you have managed switches, now all of a sudden you can have a single DHCP server that serves dozens of LANs. And it's the IP helper that says, hey, your DHCP server is right over here. Now this is industrial strength because what happens next is nothing short of beautiful. In your DHCP scope, you can specify what your DNS is, whether or not you do NetBIOS. Did we talk about NetBIOS and how nasty it is? And how you don't want to leave NetBIOS active on your network because it's noisy?
I believe we did.
and it's
Yes, we did.
security hazard, and it's all sorts of headaches, right? Now, sometimes you got to turn it on in order to be able to join a domain. That's kind of a headache. All right, but basically, on that same network now, right? Let's just get back to a simple network. You have a DHCP, you have ARP with the IP helper, or DHCP relay. It's also known as a DHCP relay when it's done to scale. That's the other name for it. It tells you who the DNS is. Now you're probably thinking, so what? The DNS specifies so here's what happens. You turn on the machine, you have a PC or a laptop, all right? You got somebody sitting there with a keyboard. Yeah, I'm trying to be a little more entertaining now because, you know, I'm like drawing pictures and stuff, right? I hope you can appreciate that.
It is very much appreciated.
Yeah, so basically what you have now is this client, you turn it on, it starts broadcasting on the layer 2, right? So the switch says, hey, if you want DHCP, get it from this DHCP server, right? The DHCP, so this is the first step, this is the second step, this is the third step, and this is the fourth step. That managed switch allows you to control where you get your DHCP addresses from. The DHCP addresses include DNS, include exclusions for NetBIOS, so it's automatically disabled. And it tells you where to find, so when you want to join a domain or you want to be a part of a domain, it tells you where the domain controllers are, right? Put another way, once you're a part of the domain, now you have this centralized management, right? So once you're a part of an Active Directory domain, you have the ability to do this. You can run some services called Ldap and Kerberos. And this may not seem like a really big deal, but when you're looking at stability and scalability, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, people used to log in with, you know, logins and passwords. They had this thing called Lan Manager. And it's still around. It's old school. And in the old days, it was a part of Windows NT. Now that's ancient. The protocol is called NTLM. And it used to run a system called WinS. And in the old days, before we had the internet and we had all sorts of cool stuff, to make a long story short, there were some pretty hard limits to what you could do. And in recent times, the way that people log in on a domain, there are still these older pieces, and you want to get rid of this, right? You want to get rid of Lan Manager when you set up an enterprise centralized security account management environment. If you want to go to scale and you want smooth, hot, reliable network service, access to data, roaming profiles, all that kind of stuff, you have to have a domain that has a directory And that's what this is. Lightweight Directory Access Protocol is what this stands for. Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, LDAP. And more importantly, Kerberos. Now, Kerberos is it's a huge thing. And as long as you have Kerberos, a lot of things work much, much better on your domain.